Yo, patrons! This is Johannes from Noisebud, and today I'm giving you a new plugin, or the higher paying tiers. Everyone will have this eventually, but right now it's for the higher paying tiers, and that's because I have some things I want to change. I want to write the manual and stuff before I release for everyone. But my higher paying tiers can try this right now, and it's pretty cool. And I'm gonna put it in that screen right there, right now. There we go. This is or hum, as I will refer to it sometimes, and sometimes I will say So this plugin is I was working with an update for bass flip because I thought that it would. What I want in bass flip is it to be. I don't want it to affect the audio. I want it to affect the audio as little as possible. I just want the peaks to be lower. I don't want you to be able to hear that the plug is there. And one way I wanted to try to make it even better than it is that I wanted to track the highest peak in the low end and just phase revert that or change the phase of that, not everything in the low end as it is in the current version. So I created an algorithm that tracks the highest peak in the low end. But while doing that, I got an idea that what would happen if I could make an EQ out of this. So you just could EQ that highest peak. So if it's a problem, I mean, normally you can do this. You can put a dynamic EQ and have it work, but that will only work at the current peak. And you can use things like soothe to do this, but that will affect all the peaks in the low end. I just want to affect the highest peak. I want to leave the rest alone. So that's where this plugin comes in. And I added the first and second harmonic as separate bands. So this is a 3-band equalizer where the frequency that you adjust are decided by the highest peak in the low end, usually the fundamental of the music, and then you have the first and second harmonic as the second and third band. So that means that you can, if you have a track with maybe it's a bit oversaturated in the low end, then you can back off the first and second harmonic and maybe boost the fundamental to have a cleaner low end. Or you can do the other way, like Waves Max Bass thing, where you add more of the upper harmonics to make the low end pop through in a mix, so you can hear the low end on smaller speakers, for example. All those things you can do with this, and I thought of it as a thing to fix issues. That was my intention when I started working with it, but it turns out I've been using it for a while now, and I'm using it as a final tool to just sculpt the low end, and I'm doing very little with it, so it's really subtle, but I really like how you can just paint in your low end, and those small things that when you think that, well, it's just 1 decibel too much, and you used to maybe put a shelf filter or something, or a dynamic peak filter or a static peak filter to address it, then you could just affect that specific frequency. Maybe it was 52 hertz, but then the next tone is at 57 or 65 or whatever, and that is too much as well. This plugin fixed that, and I got amazed how musical this method was, and that's why this plugin is called because that's the sound I made when I realized that, oh, this is really nice. So that's the story behind the name. Let's play around with this thing a little bit. So here we go. This is a mix with a little bit too much low end, and I will do some subtle changes to see if I can make that, balance that up a little bit. And then we're gonna have a lot of fun, and I'm gonna talk about all the controls in this plugin. Here we go. Yeah, it's fun. I get lost in this. So I could clean up the low end. I know it's subtle, but I could clean up the low end and get a little bit more of perceived loudness and just open things up a little bit. And you hardly can hear that the plugin is there. I mean, when we listen to Delta now, I had the perceived loudness composition on, so you can hear a lot in the Delta. But let's listen to I'm gonna turn that off, and let's listen in the Delta how much is done by the plugin. And you can see how the fundamental or the highest peak in the low end just it wobbles around. I mean, there's a transient of the kick which has a lot of information in it, but probably one frequency that is higher than the rest in that particular second. Then the next maybe 10 milliseconds later, that frequency is 50 hertz instead of 80, and it shouldn't be musical it shouldn't, but it is. It follows the music. So it's it's very fun to do just small adjustments to get, it's like that mastering. It's a typical mastering plugin because this is really one of that 1% kind of thing. It's very powerful to achieve that 1% thing. So this is and I'm going to talk about all the controls in it because there's no manual yet. I'm working on it right now. When you click the manual button, you just come to something that explains what delta and bypass is, and I think you know that. So, well, we'll see when I have the time. I'm gonna finish. There's a couple of things that I'm gonna change before I release it for everyone, so my higher paying tiers can enjoy this right now. Otherwise, you need to wait a little bit. All right, let's talk about the controls. I'm gonna dial back this, reset to default. This is the default settings. And this is one thing I'm gonna change. You can see that even though we're not playing anything, the frequencies are jumping around, and that's because I'm feeding the plugin with jitter as when it's in bypass, when there's no signal. So you never hear this. It's never blended into the output signal. And so you don't need to see, this is pretty much noise that has, random peaks in the low end. So I'm gonna make make that static when the plugin doesn't receive a signal, instead of watching the measurement of noise. So that's one thing I'm gonna fix with the next update. But you never hear that, so it's not an issue. All right, let's go back to discussing the plugin. So let's talk about the bands first. So we have 3 bands. This is the fundamental, and it says down here, fundamental, first harmonic, and second harmonic. The upper part is a minimum phase equalizer, so it's kind of an analog style, and then you have a knob to boost and attenuate the signal with 7 decibels. So it does 7 decibels. You have a dynamic and a static mode, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. They're both cool. I usually use it in the dynamic because that's you hear the plugin less. I find that anyway, the way I use it. You have a Q knob, and this is at the widest position, it's 1 octave, and then it just goes deeper and steeper. And when you're up at 50%, you hardly hear a difference from 100% because it's already so steep at 50%. So yeah, actually, let's listen to the delta with this is 50% of the Q value. The reason you hear the rest of the spectrum a little bit is because we're changing it's a minimum phase, so we're changing the phase, which means that in the delta there will be leakage of other things. Plus, the signal goes through a lot of things in this plugin, so every step adds sometimes just a tiny level change, because different reasons for that. It doesn't affect the signal, other than you can hear some of the full spectrum in the delta. So, but I'm thinking of making a compensation algorithm so that we compensate for that, but I don't think it's really necessary. It won't affect the quality of the plugin, just the delta signal, and that's not interesting enough to put time on, I think. We'll see. All right, that's the minimum phase. In the first band, you have it says soft clipper. It's more of it's a saturator. I actually gonna change that to saturation instead. So what this will do is that it will add harmonics to the fundamental, but it won't use everything in the low end. It will only use the information from the there's a FFT algorithm that finds the highest peak and just put that out, and it's that signal that's run through the saturator, so it will only saturate the highest peak. And that's cool, because if you need to attenuate that a little bit but you feel that the energy goes away, then you can make that you can one of you actually messaged me, and that was the beep here right now. Yeah, okay. You can add the harmonics from the fundamental while backing off the fundamental, and that's pretty cool. So that works like waves max bass or something like that. That's that button, and the line of phase is this is a bit special. It's not only that it's line of phase. So this is the actual what's controlling the whole equalizer actually. So it's a level knob for the frequencies that are highest in peak, the highest peak value in the low end. So nothing else. So if you have two sine tones side by side, so one is at 50 hertz and the other 55, and the 55 is a bit higher than the 50 hertz, then this control will only control 55. It won't touch 50 hertz, just 55. So it's you really single out the highest peak with this. The other line of phase filters is the same thing, but it creates a narrow bandpass line of phase bandpass filter of the first and second harmonics. So this is the first harmonic, and when you going to the right with the knob, then you are boosting the signal from 0 decibels up to plus 7 decibels. When you go to the left, you attenuate the signal by 7 decibels. And that's the same with this, but it pretty much invert the phase of the signal when you go to the left. The difference is that the fundamental is not a bandpass filter, it's the actual fundamental, while the first and second harmonic is bandpass filters created from the first harmonic from the frequencies that is found by the first band. So they are a bit different, these two. And they also are they are phase inverted when you go to the left, so it will remove the frequencies in that band pass by phase cancellation. So that are the bands. We're gonna have a little look at the dynamic and the static modes of these later on, but it's like any EQ, that if it's static, then it's always, if I put this to minus 7 decibels, then it will always remove 7 decibels from this frequency, while in dynamic it will only do that as there is a peak in the low end actually happening. So this is more, when it's dynamic, you can reach the overtones of the fundamental, while in static it will always just attenuate that signal a little bit. All right, then we have a threshold up here. The threshold is just where the plugin is active. So as the signal goes above, the effect is active. When it goes below, it's bypassed, and that's because I feel that you don't need to process the signal if it's just a reverb tail, for example, in the end of the song. Then it's just perfectly fine that the signal goes below the threshold and you bypass the plugin. So no necessary, non-unnecessary processing is taking place. That's the thought behind the threshold. Input gain. This is it won't affect the output of the plugin, or it will in some way, but this controls the signal that is used to analyze the signal. So But you can use why it's there is because you can use it as a kind of wet and dry knob of different reasons. I don't have a wet dry in this plugin because I'm dealing with minimum phase filters and I don't think they work perfectly with a wet and dry knob, even if the phase shift is really small. But I don't like using wet dry with minimum phase, so it's a personal thing. Maybe I will add that later. I haven't tried how it sounds, but usually I get annoyed when I'm using minimum phase and wet dry stuff. But you can use the input gain to decrease or increase the effect of the plugin. So if you put everything in dynamic mode and then you use the input gain, that will be pretty much like an amount knob. So at max it will just max out everything, and if you're going to the left of, you will attenuate the signal a little bit and the effect will be less prominent. Method, this is a cool button. With the track that I'm demoing this with, it doesn't have that much, or it has a lot of effect, and it actually is more than it should. The difference between the two, there's two methods. The difference is that when in default position, which is the up position of method, then it will always measure the highest peak in the low end, no matter what that is. That means that if it's a transient that is full of noise, then it is just then it will follow the noise, the highest peak. So that will be a bit chaotic, because that could be 100 hertz and there could be 50 hertz in the 1 millisecond later. I thought that would sound really bad, but it doesn't. It works because everything is part of the music, so it's more musical than I thought it would be. So I usually use it in this mode. But the other mode, that will only find a signal when it can find a tone. So it needs to, I don't remember if I did, I think I did just one sine cycle. So it just needed one full cycle to trigger the algorithm. That means it won't do anything with your kick, for example, because the start of the kick is often has a lot of noise in it, and it's hard to find a clean tone in that. So then it won't be effective. And if we play with this, let's make a crazy delta so we can demo this. So I'm gonna take away everything to the max position here, and we'll listen to the delta. We can hear that the plugin is doing a lot, but if we click the other method, it's silent. It doesn't, because the signal has it. There's so little clean tones in the low end in this music, so it doesn't find a tone. There you go. There was a section where it actually found some clean tones, and then it would activate the plugin. So that's the two methods. One way of using this is if everything sounds good, but in one place you maybe have a sine tone or something that it's just too much. That will work really well with this plugin. Then you can attenuate that particular place without touching anything else in the whole track. So that one can be one way of using it. Then you will also see that in a lot of music there's actually a lot going on. If you have a pretty clean low end with maybe a distinct kick at some positions, and in between there are a bass line playing, then it will just find the bass line and it will leave the kicks. So the method, it depends on the material. It can be really cool. Then we have the comp, stat, and limiter. These are actually the same controls as in bass glove. So comp is a compressor that will try to achieve the same perceived loudness as the dry signal by compressing the signal. So it does that continuously. That means that it will fluctuate a little bit. It works like a kind of a glue compressor. It sounds really nice. I usually use the plugin in this mode. But sometimes you can, if you're doing a lot with it, it can you can start to hear the level fluctuate a little bit, and then you can use static if you want loudness compensation. And it's actually good to use these two in this plugin, because when the plugin is not in use, then it will mix, it will blend in the dry signal instead of the processed. That means that you do a lot with the processed signal so that you lose gain or you add a lot of gain, and the low end goes away in a break, then the level will fluctuate if you don't use any of the static or the compressor mode of loudness compensation. So you should, in most cases, use this. If you just adjust something a little bit, which I often do as well, then you can skip it. I mean, it's a use your ear kind of thing. I'm actually thinking of adding a third method that's faster than this, because this is a really slow compressor. I'm thinking of adding a faster compressor, and maybe, yeah, we'll see in an upcoming version. The limiter is a limiter. It's usually pretty transparent, but you will hear it in, let's listen to it. You will hear it in the delta as a lot of crackles. The thing with limiting is that in the delta it sounds like it's horrible, but when you listen in with the whole track, it's often not that audible as you think. Sometimes it is, but let's listen to, this is some extreme settings. Now I boosted everything. It didn't sound that well, that good. All right, that's the limiter, and I think I talked about the whole plugin. So this is I think you're gonna like it. I'm gonna end this video with just playing around with settings, remove all the low end, add a lot of the harmonics and stuff like that, so you can hear how it sounds, and then go and download it and have fun with it. So if you want to stay around, watch me play around with this some more, then stay around, or I see you with the next plugin. So have a good evening. All right, here we go. fun.